This was my favorite bookshelf speaker, the B&W 685 S1. Then, I reviewed the B&W 606 S3, and that blew the 685 out of the water. More resolution, tighter bass, beautiful mids, and now I have the 706 S3 in their place. At twice the price of the 606s, do they blow them out of the water? It should be noted that I had to send the 606s back prior to getting the 706s in for review, so a direct comparison between the two wasn't going to be possible. Also, I'm listening to the 706s in a completely different space, different amplification, different almost everything. So, comparing my memory of the 606s against what I'm hearing out of the 706s isn't really going to be fair, but I'm going to try. The 706 S3 bookshelf was sent along with their matching stands and the matching center channel speaker, the HTM72 S3. On paper, these speakers are fairly similar. A 1-inch high-frequency driver, a 6.5-inch continuum cone bass mid-range driver, recommended power 30 watts to 120 watts at 8 ohms, sensitivity at 88 dB, and the bass reflex flow port is around the back. The 706 differentiates by having a 1-inch decoupled carbon dome high-frequency driver, a frequency response of 50 Hz to 28 kHz at plus or minus 3 decibels, and at 18.6 pounds, it's about 3 pounds heavier than the 606s. The HTM72 S3 is a compact center channel speaker. It features the same 1-inch decoupled carbon dome high-frequency driver and dual 5.25-inch continuum cone mid-bass drivers. Frequency response for this is 70 Hz to 28 kHz plus or minus 3 decibels, and sensitivity is 87 decibels. Around the back, of course, is a flow port and a pair of binding posts. The 706 is a big leap as far as physical build and quality of materials in comparison to the 606s, and whoever shoots the marketing material for Bowers & Wilkins does a really good job of elevating the 606s to at least look like they are up to the same level of craftsmanship, because when you see the two in person, they're not close. The 706s are far more premium, most notably as the front baffle is curved and the drive units protrude out, giving them a distinct look. Since all of my 600 S3 series reviews were in white, I requested the 706s in all black, and the black was piano black gloss. They're also available in satin white and mocha, and if I'm being honest, I sort of regret not requesting the satin white or the mocha just because piano black gloss, and if you saw the Quad Ravello reviews that I did, I have a hard time shooting piano gloss speakers without my lights or myself showing up in the reflection, so yeah. The speaker is 3 pounds heavier, and you notice that weight almost immediately picking up the speaker. It also feels more substantial, and with a simple knock test, you don't hear any sort of cabinet vibration or resonance coming out of it. It's also seamless and more luxurious feeling overall. The grille itself is nice too. Instead of being completely flat, they feature a curved indentation around the drivers, which is really nice. The matching speaker stand is a really great option too. I admittedly was a bit more trepidatious because on their website, Bowers & Wilkins states that it's a gloss speaker stand, and when I hear gloss speaker stand, I think of dust, fingerprints, and reflection hell. And fortunately, it's none of those things. It's actually just the base plate and the top plate that's gloss, and then the center column is matte black with a silver spine running down the front. It's a really nice complement to the speaker, especially when the grills are off. And then additionally, the speaker stand features cable management, so you can just route your speaker cables down and have a much cleaner, more beautiful setup than you would with dangly speaker wires, and I really don't like those. So if you are looking for a matching speaker stand for these speakers, definitely consider the supplied or the available Bowers & Wilkins stand, because it's a great compliment and it's functional. Unlike my review for the 606s, I didn't move these speakers around from system to system. I left them in the same place the entire time. Front and center in my living room, on either side of my media unit with the center channel in the middle, connected to the Marantz Cinema 70 receiver with the front pre-routed to the Cambridge Audio Evo 150 streaming integrated amplifier. For vinyl, I used the lovely Alva TT V2 turntable. For the rears, I broke out my old trusty 685 S1s. They don't match up exactly, but they're B&Ws. They're close enough. And for now, the Q Acoustics QB12 subwoofers takes care of the low end while my 610 sub is in for repair. It's been a few weeks now. I really wish they'd hurry up. For home theater, I have the 685s turned down about 6 decibels given their close proximity to my head, and my media source of choice is the Apple TV 4K. Out of the box, these speakers sounded pretty flat, and I'm pretty sure that these weren't broken in prior to me receiving them, so I took a few days just to break them in for myself. And once I did, these speakers sounded spectacular. And I promised that I wouldn't do this off the top, but here I am doing it. Just off of my horrible memory of the 606s, not horrible memory of them, but, my bad memory and my memory of those speakers. These sounded tighter, more refined, and a bit more muscular down low than my memory of the 606s. And given that these are essentially the same size and they have the same driver configurations, this was a bit surprising. And it's much in the same way that when I reviewed the silver 100s from Monitor Audio against the bronze 100s, where, yes, there was a marked step up in physical build, but then also sonically, there was maybe a marginally better resolution and tighter bass coming out of the silver 100s. That's what I feel is happening out of these speakers in comparison. But it's also decidedly subjective, as it comes down to individual hearing, where others may claim to hear a bigger difference between the two, and it really comes down to the individual listener. I hope I'm pronouncing this one right. From Synchro, it's Grace or Grace. This is another one of those tunes that made me hop online and make another vinyl purchase. But if I'm being honest, I really wish this was like a 12-inch with a single-sided 45 RPM version, because in this case, the digital copy sounds better. I played this tune with the sub turned off at the beginning, and all the gritty atmospherics were on full display. The tune still had lots of vibes, but it felt like there was something missing. And with the sub turned on, all that low-end information and the full range sound of this track came back, and it was a much fuller sound overall. Ditto for Destro from Gremlins and Jesta from their massive Lee Garden Historical Preservation Society LP. If I'm being honest, the whole album is amazing, and it's a true long player in that it's great from start to finish, as the whole album's a bit of an experience as much as it is great individual tracks. This one leans a bit more towards the darker end of the spectrum in drum and bass, and truth be told, if you're new to drum and bass, maybe this wouldn't be the first track that you should listen to, because it might be what am I listening to? But if you enjoy some D&B, then this one slams. And since it's got a great break and is fairly unchanging throughout, I felt immersed in the sounds. The highs are clean and detailed without any cringy moments. Sometimes, especially with the heavily edited and distorted breaks in drum and bass, there's a tendency for me to cringe at the sharpness of some breaks, and that didn't come through here. So either it's just spectacularly made, or there's some reining in going on in the high ends of these speakers. Whichever one it is, I'm thankful. Playing Bobby Caldwell's My Flame, I picked this up in Toronto at Play a Record the last time I was in the city, and it's been stuck in my head ever since. I've mentioned it in a few other reviews, and I've owned this track in my collection for years now, so I know it like the back of my hand. And playing on the Alva TT V2 turntable, it's the perfect non-bass heavy track for me to test out in a system, because A, I do know it so well, and B, it's not mixed or mastered like modern electronic music where everything's just squished or compressed. It's mixed with a lot of air in it, and it's a track made decades ago, so there's a lot more room for things to breathe, and everything just sounds really, I don't know, just beautiful. I find that the mids really shined with this speaker, and his voice sounded really natural. And when things went from quiet to full on in this track, I find that the top to bottom cohesion of the speaker was excellent. You had great imaging, you had a great soundstage, and you felt like you're part of the mix. It was a wonderful listen. Shogun. Okay, this show rules. And everything from the costume design to the art direction to the atmospherics, everything they had to take out and then put back in because it's set in Japan, but it was shot in Canada. So whatever they did in the sound mix of this is pretty spectacular. And particularly when they're speaking Japanese, because it's not a language I understand, that the dialogue just becomes texture and tone to my ear. So if I'm closing my eyes and not reading subtitles on a second watch, it just feels like another piece of sound in a way, like where there's a lot of texture in it. There's a lot of grit and a lot of bite coming out of these speakers, and it's wonderful. And it's maybe a great showcase of how great that center channel is, but then also, I guess, the continuum drivers and the cohesion between those and the decoupled carbon dome tweeters, that speakers are really well made and there's great cohesion between them and dialogue is amazing. And because this guy's never going to grow up, I watched the granddaddy of them all, the Showcase of the Immortals, WrestleMania 40, and I watched Cody Rhodes finish his story. And yeah, I'm admittedly like a little bit too invested, so a live event like this felt really live and I was fully immersed. And these speakers, the package that I had set up, worked really, really well. And on night one, I had the main event turned up pretty loud, and I must have really understanding neighbors because night two, I had the whole event turned up to 11. I was fully invested, and this didn't disappoint. Like, it was one of the more immersive experiences I've had in home theater. And it might have something to do with the fact that I'm in a bit more of an intimate room than any of the home theaters that I had set up previously. So I'd be curious about other home theaters moving forward. But man, when night two was at its peak and Undertaker dropped in and the crowd went crazy, like, you felt like you were part of the crowd. It was pretty amazing. So like in my B&W 606 S3 review, where those speakers just blew the 685 S1s out of the water, that made sense because there's a generational difference between those speakers, like over a decade in time. And the 706s, in comparison, like to the 606, like the overall build and craftsmanship of that speaker is levels above the 606. Like, and if that's important to you, like it is me, definitely consider the 706s. But when it comes to sound, it's a bit more subjective, a bit more nuanced too, just really dependent on the listener. I found that there was better cohesion top to bottom between the treble unit and the mid-bass driver, and the overall tonality of the speaker was just better. And I encourage you, if you have the opportunity, just sit down with the two speakers and give them a good side-by-side. And maybe that's something I'll be able to do in the future. But for now, 706 comes out on top. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks so much.